Hello and welcome to this episode of MediaUp Conversations, a platform where communication, media, and related professionals and scholars share insights on topical concepts, strategies, and tools. MediaUp is powered by the Jack's Night Professional Development Series, in line with its mission to facilitate knowledge sharing between the town and gang. My name is Ifeanyichukwu Dinwoke. I'm your host. On this episode of MediaUp Conversation, we want to learn how to run a newspaper organization. And to do justice to this discussion, I'm joined by someone who has experience both in print and digital media, and he brings over a decade, nearly 2 decades of experience in journalism. His name is Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, who is the editor-in-chief of Prime Business Africa, a publication of Newstide Publications Limited. Dr. Mbamalu is a versatile, Bloomberg-trained, Reuters-certified journalist with deep knowledge of the print and digital media and has practiced in Nigeria. Again, like I said earlier, he brings to this conversation 70 years of experience, both in print and media. He rose to the rank of news editor in Guardian before resigning to start Prime Business Africa. Dr. Mbamalu, thanks for joining us on this edition of MediaUp Conversations.
Thank you, Ifeanyi. I'm glad to be here.
So, thank you very much once again. I want us to start from the beginning. And the beginning for me in this case is, how did you decide to do mass communication? How did you choose mass communication?
Well, it's always an interest. Thank you, Ifeanyi. It's always an interesting ton of things for me. I actually didn't plan to study mass communication at the University of Nigeria. I had wanted to read law, but after JAMB, as it was called those days, dealt always, in fact, it cut me off by 1 mark to law. I will qualify for any other course in arts and humanities, but for law, and it will be by 1 or 2 points. Because then I was actually teaching after my secondary school certificate examination. That was in the late 80s, precisely 1989. Then they were still doing this program they called auxiliary teaching. I got teaching job, did it for 1 year, but had to extend it for another 2 years. So I was comfortable, so I was just taking my time. I must read law. So I wrote JAMB first time, got me by 1 point. I was still teaching. Second year, I did it by 2 points. The third time, by 1 point again. No, I said no, I had to do something else. And that's how I got myself into a related course to what I felt at that time was related to law, and then and that was dramatic as theater arts then. So I got into theater arts first year, but because I just got in there because I wanted actually to write another jump from school and go in for law, and perhaps about for the 1 year I would have put in. So, but after I wrote the JAMB first year theater arts, I wrote JAMB from the school. In the school, I wrote JAMB there. And then after that, JAMB withheld the results. They seized my own result, specifically. Perhaps, of course, there was no other reason other than the fact that perhaps I could have done so well and they wouldn't understand. Because, theater arts was everything literature, everything arts and everything. So by doing that a year, the writing JAMB within that, of course, there was no question. I remember there was no question there I couldn't have, I wasn't able to answer. I was sure I got almost everything in those areas. So that result was withheld. So I felt I still needed to, I didn't want to read theater arts, continue theater arts. So I had to go in to mass comm. Found out actually that was where I belonged, as it were. So that's how I got to study mass communication. I studied after I made the mandatory 3.5, when I actually made about 3.8 or 9, and I had to move over to mass comm. So that was second year instead of first year. So that is second year actually, because if you make a particular point, you wouldn't have to go back to first year. So that's how I studied mass comm. Left the school 1997. 98 actually, January 98, because of the strikes. Then you notice that in 1998, 2 sets actually graduated. So we are January 98. UNN had another year, I think September, October 1998 again. So those coming behind us graduated the same 1998 that we actually graduated. We had to leave 1997, actually. So that's how I studied mass comm. I don't know whether that answered your question.
Yes, it did. But then, so you move from an interest in law, theater art, and then mass communication. How were you able to cope or get started from that point to the point where you had your first byline?
Okay, fine. And perhaps I need to put this straight that there was never interest in theater arts. It was a pathway to law, I believed at the time. So because there was already an intention to write another exam while as an undergraduate to write another exam. So I felt I needed to be in the university. I needed to leave the school I was teaching because it was making me so comfortable. They were giving me all the responsibilities, games master, days one, the head teacher for literary and debating club and the rest. So I felt I was like a big, but everybody was answering SAS. So even those that were almost your age at that point, we are in a senior, in exam classes like SS3 or something like that. So, so I felt I needed to leave my comfort zone. So let me enter the university, and then from there, because it had to be law. So yeah, from then to my first byline, actually, if you ask me, my first byline would be when I, in my second year, when I did my internship at the Anambra Broadcasting Service, as it was called. It's still called Anambra Broadcasting Service today, ABS. And that was in 1994, I think so. Now, about 1994, that was when I had my first byline. But it wasn't easy actually before then, because while in mass communication, I had to do some courses, like a few courses I didn't do in first year. I had to do them while in second year. So that means that I had to carry over a course up to 10th year, the rest. And surprisingly, I saw myself doing better than most of the people who did first year in mass comm and all of those. Of course, theater arts, mass comm we're in the same faculty. They're still in the same faculty today. So so that body me. And then coupled with the fact that I had to do media attachment, what we used to call it then was media attachment. Internship actually, at the time and all of those. But because I was determined, because by the time I got into mass communication, I noticed there was no need for me to read law anymore. There was no need for me to, because it's actually they are of the same family, like law, and I noticed I actually wanted to be a journalist, so I'm not lawyer, so to speak, a lawyer. So by the end of the day, I got to do my media attachment, and then it was interesting actually, because I had to even anchor media news reports, go to events, cover events, come back, and I enjoyed the trust of my head of news then, one Chinwoba. I don't know whether he's a bit, to me then, a bit advanced, but I think he's still alive today. In 1994, was heading newsroom then, head of news at the point. Chinwoba was his name. I've forgotten the first name. So, and they all gave me encouragement, and it was interesting. So right there, I knew that I had more than an interest in journalism that I would actually practice. And that was why, by the time, talking about my actual byline now as a graduate of mass communication. So that was why when I got to do my NYC in Delta, actually I was posted to Delta Broadcasting Service, the Rainbow Station, as it was called then, where I had to also work, with them. I was supervised by Mr. Idowu Olushejafo, actually, who later became a GM. That he was head of programs then, who later became GM of the overall DBS with the headquarters in Asaba, because they had a station in Warri and they had the radio station in Asaba. But much later, the two were, and I think the headquarters now was in Asaba, became Asaba, and then they also now had this TV again in Asaba. But I worked at the Rainbow Station in Warri, as an NYSC member. I was given that opportunity to produce programs, to air program, to actually present. So I became the producer and presenter of a program they called NYSC Half Hour. I remember people calling me from UNN, as a graduate from UNN. People, I never knew that Rainbow Station was being watched in Nsukka. So people, somebody will say someone called, there was no phone then, but someone then there was, what we had was, landline and all of those. So, somebody would call, I didn't have a landline then, but somebody would call, and said, somebody called from Nsukka and said, this, we saw you on TV and whatever, and that was a motivation to me. I like your programs and all of those. So it became like a motivation for me to do more. So from then, I knew I was going to be a journalist. But something happened. Just before I could leave, I would leave the Rainbow Station as NYSC member. There was already the need for teachers at the Federal Government College, the next door neighbor to Rainbow Station, where I was the. So they have actually they had a common fence. They still have that common fence today. So they were looking for teachers, maybe more or less ad hoc teachers, and so to speak. So because I had a background in teaching, I applied, and that was how I got to begin to do part-time, with them while doing my NYSC. But by the time I finished my NYSC, they retained me as a PTA teacher at Federal Government College. So that was how I taught there for about 2 more years. When I made up my mind, I had to leave for good to go and practice the real journalism. So I left Federal Government College in 2002, early 2002, and then went to Lagos, where I went to Lagos in 2003, actually, and got a job with a media house, one magazine actually, as a sub-editor. Did that 4 months. I wasn't happy with what, and I moved on to another magazine called Nigerian Telecom News. Then Nigerian Telecom News was produced by Logical Communications. I worked there as chief correspondent, and for about 6 months, and then the Guardian pushed me. It was like pushing. I wrote a report. It was about MTN. Then MTN was new. If you remember the time, MTN came new, just 2003, 2004. There were issues about management issues and the rest. And we did a cover story. I did a cover story about that and telecom news, and it became an issue. They threatened to go to court, so many things, and all because they sacked they had to sack Nigerian managers, and replace them with South African leaders. So I investigated what happened, there, and then came out with explosive story on that. And it became an issue for the organization. MTN was threatening. There were so many things, and then what happened? Was the following edition, because the monthly edition was supposed to be on then Pentascope. Pentascope was thinking about getting to buy Nitel at the time. That was the time. I think El Rufai then was the DG of BPE. Trying to sell Nitel at that point. So I was to do a cover on that. But because of the issue we had at the time, my organ at the time felt we needed to have a second look at this. So we're already having a potential court case in the last edition. So this one, because I was like an activist, activist journalist, as he used to call me then. So I was looking for following the money and looking for people that was my early days of journalism, but I was more or less like, if you like, courageous. So I didn't bother. But the owner of the newspaper, why he liked my work, he was afraid of the trouble I could create with my content, which actually bordered on truth and all of those. So, and then, we needed a second chance to look at that. So in the context of getting a senior person in the industry to look at that before we go to press, that somebody looked at my work and saw what I did and whatever, and we said discussion and all of it. Now said, would you like to work for the Guardian? I said, why not? And that's how it came. A discussion started going on, and then before I knew it, I found myself working in the Sunday Guardian, or working for the Sunday Guardian, that we call it the Guardian on Sunday, as a business correspondent. Remember I had a background, reporting telecoms, because telecom news was a business. So from telecom news to the Guardian on Sunday, where I was the chief correspondent, I had to work under the editor then, Mr. Jama Nikolapo, who had so much confidence in me. By the way, he's actually is on the board of Prime Business Africa today, so you can see it's the familiar path. So he got so interested in my work as a journalist, as a correspondent, and gave me so much responsibility in terms of covering stories, covering events, and going for investigative stories, and all the rest. So that's how I got myself busy. The Guardian on Sunday. My first byline, as I said in our informal discussion, was really dramatic for me, because what my motivation was all about, having my name, and a strong story. My byline was a very strong story. It's like an obsession for me. So I had to go out of my way actually to get strong stories. And if God help you, you made the mistake of omitting my name from my story, my God, you are in trouble. Yes. So much more than money, much more than my salary then was my byline. So I remember the first time I did a story, and it was about also a telecom story. I think about it then news. It was to appear on page 3. The week after I joined, my first story, page 3. Remember, the Guardian on Sunday then was of course, is still a weekly paper. So it comes out every Sunday. There's a daily, and there is the Sunday Guardian, and there's the Saturday Guardian. So I started with this Guardian on Sunday. So I remember I had to go to the newsstand, the vendors. Even though I was to be in the office the following day, I couldn't sleep. I was waiting. My name will appear on my story in the Guardian that day. So very early in the morning, 6 a.m. I was on to the newsstand and bought the paper. Even though I was to get the paper free, and I get to the office by 9. If I could have got there by 9 or 8. I would still get the paper, but I couldn't wait. I had to go to the newsstand. In fact, what I didn't do, which I almost did, was to tell everybody standing there, you see, this name is my name. See, this name you see, Marcel Mbamalu, is me. Is me. So that's the passion. It was really that serious. So, and I got there. When I got to the office, I still got my official paper and the rest. But that tells you, it gives you an idea of the motivation, what was actually motivating me. So that's my first byline. And I remember it was a day I mean, a year or 2 years or 3 years after, I was going home and I had my usually I used to hit front page. My stories hit front page every week. For the Guardian. So one of those front business story then, front page story. I was to travel on a Sunday because then you couldn't travel until Sunday morning. And you had to come back Monday. If you travel to East from Lagos, you had to come back on Monday because we did have our weekly meetings, prayer meetings on Tuesdays. So you finish production late, maybe 1 a.m. on Saturday night for the Sunday paper. It's coming up on Sunday morning. And then you leave, you travel. If you have to travel, that morning, first bus to East, and then you come back Monday evening because you have a meeting Tuesday morning. So we never had weekend. If you work on this, Sunday on Sunday, you never had time to. You couldn't attend weddings. You couldn't go for any. Even church, you will be tired on that morning, on the Sunday morning. So I was traveling on Sunday morning, and I had to buy like 2 or 3 paper, the Guardian, clutching it. So by the time I got home, because I needed to show my dad, of blessed memory, that's, this is your son, this is my name in the Guardian, and I got to my dad, he was reading, it wasn't much of whatever. I told him, say, see, this is my story, Papa, this is my story, on front page of the Guardian. So making front page was like a big deal, then for us. And I did make it almost every Sunday. So that's for the byline. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Okay, no, I mean, it's very detailed. Now, we're going to move, when you go to Guardian, I wanted to initially ask you how you got to Guardian, but that question has been answered. So from Guardian, what's beyond journalism skill, writing, interviewing, researching, what shot you from a correspondent in Guardian on Sunday to become a news editor in Guardian?
Yes, actually, before news editor, business editor, before news editor. Actually, I became unofficially the head of business desk, and then in 2009 or thereabouts. So, and because, like I told you, I was working under Mr. Mbamalu, who had so much confidence in what I was doing. And the business editor at some point had to retire, and he called me and said I should head the business desk, and it was like I couldn't understand. I was barely maybe 4 or 5 years then, and he said, yes, you can do that. And I started doing that, and still reporting. It didn't stop me from going to the field but I was also editing copies for that unit. And one thing about print, production is not really about editing the content. You have to also be involved. The head of unit, the line editor, as we call it, also has to be part of production. So you produce the content, you edit the content, you follow it through to production, because what happens is that errors can get in the process of that, because a lot of people handle a lot of sections and units handle that page. So you need to, your pages, as we call it, like business pages, if you have like 6 pages of business to produce, and those 6 pages are content in terms of editorial content, reportorial, that's a text, and then in terms of pictorial content. So all of these, you need to work with the relevant staff, be it photo editor, those that have the graphics, everyone, to ensure that this command, as the business editor, as the head of business desk, for that title. So I was doing all of those, and then suddenly, I can't remember the exact year now, but a newspaper came next. There was a newspaper that came, but it was short-lived. I think they stayed with a year and fizzled out. The next newspaper, came, and we were paying so much. And many people left. Not many on Sunday desk, but maybe in the wider newsroom, many people left. But on Sunday Guardian, the news editor left. And then my editor also got to me and said, you are going to combine business with news. You can imagine, 2 important units. I said, no, sir, I can't do that one. And then that was in the evening, and I went home. I said, he didn't say anything. I said, I won't do it. I won't be able to, sir. Sorry, because I was already engrossed with business. And anything that would make me to leave business to start, I never thought that going to be news editor was important as being business editor. So I said no, clearly no, and he didn't bother me. I left. So when I got home, because of discussion around 12 midnight or 1, I told my wife, I said, look at what happened in the office. I was just saying it, just as a passing comment, and see, my Oga said I should. Can imagine, my Oga was telling me he did business and news at the same time. I couldn't do that. I said, what? What did you tell him? I said, of course, you know what I would tell him. No, I wouldn't be able. He said, no, is something wrong with you? How can your boss ask you to do something and you say you cannot do it? Why don't you accept it? And then he will be the one to find out that you could not do it after some time and take it away from you. Then you cannot say, you won't be the one to pass judgment on your capacity. And he would have seen your capacity before he said, I had a second thought of it. And one day I had to take 1 a.m. because of course it's our routine. By 1 a.m. we're still communicating, we're still talking, we're still communicating. When you finish production by 12 or by 1 sometimes then, and you come home, you could be called back to the office or whatever. So of course I knew he was still awake, my boss was still awake, and I had to call him by that 12. I couldn't wait. Maybe around 1, not even 12, because I knew I'd left the office around 12. So when I called, he picked it. Then I did something we couldn't hear ourselves, and I sent a message. I said, sorry, sir, for what you told me. Sorry, I will do it, sir. Oh my God, I was shocked by the response, the text message I got. But he replied to say, oh, Marcel, thank you very much. He's still alive today. He's still on the board of Prime Minister Africa today as director, actually. So because he retired in the Guardian before me. In fact, one thing we have in common is that he retired from the Guardian at 50. When he was 50. I also retired from the Guardian at 50. So it was not planned, but today we talk about it that, you see, we have something in common. Very important thing, we left at 50. Both of us left the Guardian at 50. So he replied with a very, very emotional response. Oh, Marcel, you don't know what you have just done for me. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you. You don't know what you have done for me right now by this your response. And that was when I began to think, so this meant something. And that's how I became business editor and news editor until 2012 or 2013, thereabout, 2012, yes, when officially the restructuring that took place, at the Guardian, I was made news editor officially, only news editor, Sunday Guardian. So there were a kind of reshuffle and whatever. So business was actually a kind of diminished, whatever. Sunday Guardian was no longer doing pure, based on restructuring. So started doing business as part of news and the rest, while the main business desk, the daily paper, was not carrying on with the business. So we didn't have to have this editor again from Sunday Guardian, So I became news editor, substantive for the Guardian from 2012, for the Guardian on Sunday, 2012. And then because of that, then Mr. German Nicola, my editor, left. In fact, that restructuring that made me news editor alone, and at that point, after that restructuring, he was to either remain as as the editor of the Sunday title, or move on to higher things or whatever. But he said he was 50, he was going. They pleaded with him and then he couldn't stay, he left. So another editor came in, so I was news editor. Then from then, 3 years after, I think in 2014 or 2 years after, 2014 and then, or early 2015, I was made the the substantive, the main news editor for the paper, the group news editor for the Guardian. So I moved Sunday to the daily title as news editor.
Okay. Okay. Now,
I did that function actually till 2021, March 2021, when I retired.
If you just joined us, we are listening to MediaUp Conversation powered by Jacksonite's Professional Development Series. On today's episode, we've been discussing with Dr. Marcel Mbamalu. I'll be trying to understand how exactly do you run a media organization, specifically newspaper media organization. So far in the course of our discussion, we've tried to understand how he started media, how he got his first byline. And as we move on, we'll get into other aspects of becoming editor, managing talent, and being able to run his own now digital media organization.
As graduates of the University of Nigeria Nsukka Mass Communication Department, we call ourselves Jacksonites. Years after graduation, we have not lost touch with our roots. We give back. We lend our shoulders for current students to stand on and get ahead. We donate resources and facilitate seminar sessions. Our flagship initiative, the Jacksonite Professional Development Series, JPDS, has become robust and sustainable through the efforts of Chinedumba, the steering committee chair, and her formidable working groups. Since July 2021, when our first quarterly seminar debuted to date, we have continued to grow our channels for enriching our target audience with the launch of 3 brands, namely Knowledge Hub, MediaUp Conversations, and JPDS Podcasts. So far, we have had 9 seminars with 15 facilitators and over 1,000 participants. The good news is that if you missed any of them, you can access them and other resources such as MediaUp Conversations, podcasts, and blogs with a click of a button. To access all our resources, visit jacksonitespds.com to get notifications on our latest blogs, podcasts, events, and resources. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at JacksonitesPDS. Share your feedback by emailing hello@jacksonitespds.com.
Welcome to MediaUp Conversation powered by Jacksonite Professional Development Series. And on this episode, we are looking at running a newspaper organization. Being an editor is beyond writing news or editing news. It's actually managing people, managing resources, and all of that. In a nutshell, I'd like you to tell us what exactly helped you excel in managing people beyond writing news in your throughout your tenure as a news editor.
Yes, I think as you also know, it's all about passion. For you to multitask, one thing about journalism is about multitasking. You must be ready to multitask. I think that's what, has been helping me even up to today. At Prime Business Africa, that capacity to multitask, you cannot pick it from the streets. It's something that you build over time. Capacity to multitask is very central to a successful career in journalism. You will be able to be in church and they are thinking about the front page. While you are in church, the sermon is going on, the message is going on, and all of those, and you are thinking about what is going to be on front page. Your heart is skipping front page for tomorrow, front page for tomorrow. Because from the church, you are moving you are going to work. Of course, that journalists, they work on days because you have to read the paper the following day. So it's people that produce it. So multitasking, you are doing so many things at the same time, So that's one. Even as a reporter, you need the skill to multitask, the capacity to multitask. Passion, number one. Passion. Then the capacity to multitask, very, very important. So as editor, you just take that to a higher level. But just that, apart from, people just think about journalism as being proficient in English language. No, it's not so. Otherwise, every Englishman becomes a journalist. The fact that you can write, the fact that you have good grammar, you have good oratorial, you have oratorial power, you could speak convincingly, you could write convincingly in fine English, doesn't make you a journalist. There is something much more than writing skill that makes a journalist, and that's the passion. You normally hear about eye for news. The senses is the sense in you that makes you the journalist. You understand? Not the writing skills or the speech you make, or speaking the skills for speeches. No. So, as I said earlier, the passion, the capacity to multitask, then the ability to actually ask questions. It is that asking question that makes you actually the journalist. Because if you don't ask the right questions, when I talk about asking questions, it's not really about physically asking questions. In your mind, your mind is always agitated. You are always asking why, how, all the time. Even in your personal and private life, then you must be a journalist, because the love for the people, the love for the country, the patriotism, the love for the common man, serve them the right information, not just the common man, every Nigerian, to serve them the common, the truth, whether common or special truth, is key to succeeding as a journalist. So, and for you to do that, you must ask the right questions in your mind, and then when you meet the subject, you ask the right questions. So those right questions that you ask yourself and ask society and ask the leaders of society, you have the capacity to process it and serve it to your audience. That's key. So passion, multitasking, inquisitiveness, asking questions, and then patriotism, being able to, patriotism in this does not mean being patriotic, loving those, or maybe serving the interest of those in power. No, you must be able to ask the right questions, ask those in power the hard questions, and be able to report the truth to your audience. You owe them that. You owe them that. So right. That's is journalism. Yeah.
All right. Now, the other thing about moving forward, there's this claim that journalists are poorly remunerated, especially in Nigeria. Now, I don't know if that's the case in your days in active journalism as an employee. Now, if that is the case in your own case, please, how were you able to cope with the poor remuneration? Because sometimes we hear stories about people who collect brown envelope as a coping mechanism. So, did you collect brown envelope, or do you have another means of coping?
I'm sure you don't want me to answer that question, because I just want to know your own coping. No, it's all right. The answer to your question is very simple. It's, first and foremost, let me even begin by saying that if a journalist that lives on brown envelope is not a journalist. You can't say you're a journalist when you are practicing, when you're doing journalism on an ethical manner. So it's one of the most important things that a journalist should watch out for is gratification. You don't do your work because you want gratification, you want to gain something. That's off deck. So, but the important thing is for you to find means, because people just look at it and say, oh my God, how can I do this? I don't want to be a journalist, because if I'm a journalist, then I won't be able to survive. I won't be able to make a living. I want to be rich. But the important thing is that for you to even choose to be a journalist, you are not looking for money. Journalism is calling. It's a calling. When you are, many are called, actually, the few are chosen. It's scriptural, So in journalism as well, many are called, but few are the real journalists. So you won't say because there are a few people, or even if there are many, who collect brown envelopes, then the journalism profession is a failure. There are still people today, even at the Guardian there, There's still people today at Prime Business Africa, at The Guardian. We stand at that. Okay? So, and what do? We ensure that our reports are balanced, we are fair to all, that every information that you see out there coming from us is the truth and not meant to serve an interest. Sometimes, of course, can you do a story and it's serve an interest? Of course. Many times you can do a story. Many times you can do a story and then somebody just, in fact, those days at The Guardian, there are things we used to say that there's no story you do that does not favor someone or work against someone. No matter how good or bad your story is, somebody is happy with it, somebody is sad with it. So the important thing is your interest, is the motive for that story to serve the common good. So that story must be the truth, one, and it must be in the interest of your audience, your readers, not to serve, even if it favors the subject. But is there a lesson to learn? Does it, in general, serve the interest of society? That is what guides that. So for remuneration, of course, what the media is stressing today. What the print media, for example, what is going on, right now in terms of, how much newsprint costs. The cost of production for the media right now is so high that only a few can realistically stay afloat. So, and of course, this affects salaries. So journalists are poorly paid, but that's something has to be. So it's meant for editors, owners, publishers of newspapers to begin to look for ways to marry business with the practice without compromising standards. But journalism, media business is a business. So it has to survive, first and foremost, pay salaries for it to continue to do the job of sanitizing, the watchdog role, and then the job of sanitizing the society. So for you to investigate stories, it costs money. So, and that's why I encourage media owners to look out for, there are NGOs, there are organizations out there that support investigation, journalism and investigative, we need to do that in the midst of these challenges, funding, that we see. So normally, no real journalist joins journalism because he wants to be rich. That's the first and foremost. I remember a story about when I was about 3 years, I think that was in 2006 or 2007. I was to cover an event and I had only 2,500 naira on me. I keep telling this story to my friends. I had at that point, I had a wife, I had my first daughter already then. First daughter would be about 3 years then, and I had to go to, because there was a big story and I need to live I was living in the mainland. Story, I would get it from the island, Victoria Island, really. Then, and I needed a drop to get there because the event, I had to come back around 1 a.m. All I had on me was 2,500 naira. In the bank, at home, everywhere. Home and abroad, as they would say. 2,500 naira. And then I had to take a drop. And that drop to go and go would cost me about another 2,003 or thereabout to go and come and, because I had to come back around 1 a.m. I took that risk, at the risk of starving my wife and my kid and myself. But I needed to do that because, as I told you earlier, my love for my byline on my name, on a strong story, any story, investigative story or a strong story, I need to pursue it. I need to do that, and I need to boldly put my name on it. So I went for it, and so that's it. Did I die? No. So the important thing is that it is all about sacrifice. You first and foremost know that you are a crusader. You are working for society. You are sacrificing yourself and whatever to ensure that the society works. So, but should journalists be paid well? Yes, of course, because for them to do well, they should be paid well. But while we try to find ways to navigate this, only the few that are chosen should actually be journalists. And that's what I'm saying. Those who really know why that journalism is like a crusade. It's like preaching the gospel, as we would say. It's like evangelism. It's like going out there for missionary activity, So it's just that. So don't mix up those. I'm not talking about mercantile journalism and all of those. Real journalism practice is not looking at money. It spends its own money to get the right information out there for you, So that's what it is. So they are paid, but it should be better. Yeah.
All right. Part of what I'm asking about this is that an employee has little or nothing to do about influencing his pay. The employer can't pay what he does not have, especially considering the current state we find ourselves. So what I'm looking at is that are there side hustles, legal side hustles a journalist can
legitimate. Yes. Can
consider to be able to survive.
Yes, of course. I remember when I missed that point, that part of my explanation. Why you're doing that. Remember, it's not all about getting rich, but you need to take care of a family. You need to, do what you need to do financially. So, real journalists, why chasing the story? Clean money will be chasing them. That's the point. That's the truth, actually. As you chase real story, real money is chasing you. And I could give an example myself, for example, at The Guardian. The Guardian had an arrangement then where it still has it today, I believe, where in the course of you need to, everybody is allowed to become a marketer that is looking for adverts, as long as that does not compromise the veracity and the integrity of your stories. Of course, you don't expect me, I'm investigating you and because I'm asking you for adverts, no. But with the story, with your story, attract adverts, yes, of course they do. And I can tell you, most times what I make in advert will be 3 times my salary for that month. Wow. Because I don't. Yes, of course, I never went out for that. Okay, I'm going for advert now. But you see, let me give you just one clear example. The year that there was this Bellevue crash, Bellevue air crash, I can't remember the exact year. It's there. You can Google it. Bellevue air crash that the pilot died. Lambert Emaswen was the pilot, a popular pilot then. Lambert Emaswen, died in that whatever. So I was going out to look for just in fact I was following that story from the crash. I was reporting follow-ups, everything for the Sunday, we gathered on Sunday, In the process of that, the night they were doing, I followed up to the wake keep for Lambert. I followed the pilots, apart from reporting, going to airport, reporting the whatever, following up, talking to aviation experts or whatever. I was following up the day he will be buried. They were doing wake keep, what they call service of songs or whatever for him in Ajawi State, Lagos, where he lived. I traced the house and I went there. I was watching the dignitaries that came, people that are there. I was writing, I was getting information, everything. So I was interviewing the widow. It was a process of that, interviewing the widow and others. Then they were now talking about how they wanted to place adverts, the friends clubs and whatever. They want to do obituary for him and whatever. So, okay, see this reporter is the Guardian. Is the Guardian reporter that is here covering the husband covering. Say the wife not to the he has been reporting this or whatever. He even interviewed me and all of those. So I think they placed. I got like 3 pages of adverts. Then 3 pages. They just say, okay, help us place it in the Guardian. Little did they know that if I help place it in the Guardian would allow me have at least a chunk of that money as support, because that's the policy. Yes, that's the policy. So by the time I brought 3 pages, then I think it was almost about 400,000 per page or something. And then if you can imagine, if you get like 20% of that, or whatever you call it, you know what it makes. So the point I'm making is that there are windows that you can, even the organizations can help their own reporters to survive while they are doing exactly what you expect them to do. At Prime Minister Africa, we have that policy. I carried it from the Guardian to Prime Minister Africa that if you professionally get adverts, you have a percentage as your right for getting that. Then, what are other things you can do also as journalists when you are there? You can't just rely on your income alone. You are a professional. You can write books. You can edit things for people, and they pay you. You have your spare time. When you are off duty or when you use that. You make money. Journalists actually who are real professional journalists who really have passion for the job, money will chase them if they really do the right thing. And how are they going to do that? You use a lot of freelancing thing. I remember at the Guardian, in my early days at the Guardian, I was doing things even for some international organizations, international media organizations. They will ask you, okay, help me investigate this in Nigeria. Help me get this information, right? Can you help us write this profile or this and this and send to us? Fine, because you're a journalist, you're a writer. You do those side hustles. You do all of those things. It is not against, no, your organization cannot say don't do it because you're not using their official time. And it's not encroaching on your job. So for you to be strategic enough to make, so really, if you have that capacity and have the skills, you can't be hungry as a journalist. Journalists are not meant to be beggars. They should keep their integrity, they should keep their honor because they are the watchdog of society.
All right. Now, for a lot of people, like we just discussed now, they are poorly paid. So when many journalists are retiring or resigning from their job as journalists, many of them retire into press secretaries for politicians and things like that. In your own case, you left Guardian and went to start another newspaper. Why did you do that, and how were you able to raise funds to actually do it? Considering that, like we say, journalists are poorly paid, and so tell us, why did you choose that path, and how were you able to raise funds to be able to get started?
Fantastic. My question are really simple there. Maybe 2 or 3. First, because I'm still very young. I'm still young, at least young at heart. At least young at heart. Yes, because you see, I was lucky enough to leave my paid job. At the time I still have some energy. The worst that could happen to you is when you retire, you need to retire and refire. As a journalist, journalists don't retire actually. There's no journalist that will say, okay, I've retired from journalism. You work until you die as a journalist. But you can live with paid employment. What I've just done is to move from paid employment to media entrepreneurship. Another area I'm exploring that. So it gives me a wide range of experience. And that's what I needed. I had offers by the time I left again. I had, okay, come and do this, come and do. Even funny enough, some other competing organizations to the Guardian. We want to, okay, come and edit, come and become this. I said, no, I'm tired of newsroom. Of course, I'm still in it, the newsroom stress or whatever. But the point is that I didn't want to, I just wanted to try something. One, Prime Minister Africa is in the multimedia space. Prime Minister Africa has a strong online presence now. And it's just about, for now, digital. So I have been, for a very long time, an analog expert. So I needed to be a digital expert. So I needed to do media entrepreneurship in a slightly different sphere, which is digital journalism. After rising to editorial positions, in print media. So for me, I needed to leave at 50. I left at 50. When I was 50, in fact, I was 50 in January and I left in March. So I was 50 years, 50 plus 2 months old when I left. So I still had the energy to try new things. I didn't want to go straight into paid employment immediately, and then to set up something in journalism with all the experience I've had, the trainings I've had with Reuters, the trainings I've had with Bloomberg, the trainings I had with several institutions, the Lagos Business School, the School of Media and Communications, while I was still practicing, all the international conferences and trainings I've attended in Rome, in South Africa, in Tunis, name it. So I needed to harness these experiences and these trainings to build younger journalists, to add value to the life. So I needed to set up. For me to do that, I couldn't do that at The Guardian because, of course, you wouldn't have that, the latitude, the freedom to do that. So the way you want to. So right now, if you come to Prime Minister Africa, you see that we are doing mentorship, what we call journalism mentorship program, and that's one of its kind, whereby we'll liaise with universities, mass communication departments of universities, to ensure that those who are coming out of these universities have industry skills, those market-driven skills that are required. Getting the theory from the universities, they need to have access to that. So while they're in school, we groom them so they have the confidence and the skills. By the time they come out, they are more like practicing journalists already. So employability will no longer be an issue, and then they are confident to face the industry and add value. So that's what we're doing at Prime Business Africa right now through our JUMP project, what we call Journalism Mentorship Project. So these are the things I needed to do. At The Guardian, I wanted to do that, but it's not easy to do all of those things. I made some recommendations, I made some proposals, I made all of those things, but it's not really easy to do that when you're in paid employment, because the processes it will go, a whole lot of things we have to go given. You need to pass that through your superiors, your supervisors, and then get to the owners and all of those things to get it done. So, but right now we are doing it, and these are the reasons. Then, this is what you're seeing right now. Then we talk about how was I able to do that? How was I able to do that? Given that I was poorly paid. Remember, I wasn't really poorly paid, so to speak, because I've given you a background now that The Guardian is not really one of the worst paying institutions actually in the media space. I think if you count The Guardian, The Punch, Guardian and The Punch, I think they are about, even though it can still be better, but they are about the best in terms of payment, in terms of security of salary. When I say security, every month you're sure of your salary, no delays, no whatever. Then and then the quantum of what you're paid. It can get better, but it's competitive in the industry, so to speak. So, having said that, the other aspect of business, of doing your side hustles loud, and all of those adverts and all of those things when they come and all of them. So having said that, I don't know whether it would be right to say I was poorly paid at The Guardian. I don't think so. So, but for starting up Prime Business Africa and all of that, of course, that's what I'm saying, that when you are a professional, you're a professional. If you're a professional, you should be able to put up a proposal for business. You should be able to know exactly and think clearly and know exactly what you want to do. When you put a proposal for business and the proposal is good and is viable and it's implementable, you will get investors. Investors are everywhere looking for money. There's no journalists. You don't need to. The mistake we make is that we think that we can save money to start a business. Who says so? The banks are there. Once you have a bankable project and a proposal, you go to the bank. The bank will sponsor you. It may not be as we want now. The banks may not be doing as we want now. But do it first. Get a project. Get a proposal. Get a business plan. Once you do your business plan and it's bankable and workable, you can get a bank to support it. You can get investors who want to invest in the media space to support it. You can just, so you don't have to, it doesn't have to be your money to start a business. It doesn't have to be your salaries that you have saved over the years to start a business. Even though I must say that part of what I'm doing, my pension, the bulk pension also went into this, but it's not just, that's not enough. My pension that was paid, of course, which was in millions, that we are doing contributory pensions. So the bulk sum that will come, that 25% that will come, or whatever, it will pay to you once. It went into that, but that wasn't enough. That wouldn't be enough, So you need to get investment attention, investor attention, and all of those. And you can't do that by just going to appeal to people. Please give me money, or investors, give me money. I want to do this. No. Nobody does business like that. You need to put up a business plan, bankable business plan, and the investor doesn't have to be your friend to invest. Once they look at the document, the lawyers will advise that this is good. The business lawyers will advise this is good, this and this and what. And then it's a business. So people don't know this. As you are now, Ifeanyi, you put up if there's no business you want to do, then you cannot get local and international investors if you have the right business plan. People don't know this. They just sit back there and talk and do that. Even in the village, get a business, whatever, bring it. I can tell you, once the business plan is done, we go and look for investors. We'll get them. They don't have to see you. They will look at your business plan and do their credibility checks and all of that. That's all. So I'm surprised we keep asking this question on and on about how do you whatever, as if you need to save money to start a business. In ideal societies, you don't need to save money to start a business, and media is one of it. One of those. In fact, in the media space, media is one of the areas you don't even need a cover to start a strong media house. You understand? So that's the case here. I don't know whether.
Yes, that answers. Yes, it is. We are winding down, and then.
Okay.
I want to speak to someone directly. There's a young man who just graduated from university, studied mass communication, and wants to have a career in mass communication and rise to the rank of an editor. Advise the person a minute or two. What should the person do? What is your best kept secret for such a person?
Plan your once you become an editor, plan your exit, plan your life, plan the life after the paid journalism job. That's it. In fact, because once you become an editor, that's the best you can get. In fact, your employers will be confused what to do with you afterwards, unless you want to take over the ownership of the company. So once you are the editor, you're an editor, you're on your way out. So you are already, the day you got your letter, the day I got my letter as news editor for the main Guardian, for the Guardian, General Guardian, the Guardian, it was the day I knew that I'll just give myself, say 2 years, 3 years, anything could happen. It's either you are asked to go or you go by yourself. You either, and they used to say in those days in the Guardian or at the Guardian, that's two things. Is either you leave, you are asked to go, you go by yourself, or you leave in death, you die and go. Because when you get to that stage, everything, remember, it's also a hot cake. It's also hot. That seat is hot. For example, to be news editor of a news editor is like the operations manager of a newspaper. It's like the operations manager of a bank. You have the bank manager who is the overall editor, who is the equivalent of overall editor in that paper. But the news editor is the operations manager. He knows where the vault is. He knows how much is in the vault for that day. He knows what has gone out and what hasn't gone out. He knows who took what, who signed for what, and who did not. The bank manager, who you see the face when you can ask for, doesn't know yet until they close everything for the day and give him. So that's the news editor for you. So now, once you get to that stage, what do? You start planning on what I'm doing. If you know what you want to do, would you want to go to the classroom and teach? Because actually an editor is the number one journalism teacher. So you want to add that value, like I'm doing currently to add value in universities. Having bringing that knowledge to complement what our wonderful lecturers are doing. That's okay. The practical side of this, just to add to what they are doing. So you think about that, because for me, as I said, when I finished, I said, okay, what would I do? Maybe I'll just when I retire again from Prime Business Africa, then I should be able to just go back to one village, either my own village or any village. I have a small farm behind whatever. I'll be going to the university in that place maybe once in 2 weeks, just to be narrating my experience and be adding value to what the lecturer, more value to what our wonderful lecturers are doing. So to me, that's job. Like I told you that you don't retire, so you do that until you die. So you decide, once you're an editor, will I do this or will I set up another one to now direct younger ones on how best to do this job, which is exactly what we're doing at Prime Business Africa. So basically, that's my advice for that young man who has become an editor. And God help you, if you become editor too soon, if you rise too early, the dew of life might soak you. So if you rise too early as an editor, a few years into your journalism practice, you're already an editor. People will clap for you. Oh, congratulations, whatever. But that's not a good moment. That's not really quite good for you, because you will retire also, quickly, fast. Because you lose fast, you die fast. So, and that would deprive you of the kind of experience and the knowledge you will have in the process of being that editor for many, being a journalist for many years. That's the point. So start planning from that time you are appointed on what next to do. Give yourself 2 years maximum in that position. If you don't go, people under you will be pushing for you to go because they want to be editor too. And there's a whole lot of politicking, a whole lot of things will be going on and whatever. And before you know it, the owners might get confused. They won't understand, and it will be too late before they understand what happened. You might have gone, and then they will suddenly realize what has happened. What happened?
All right. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation to join MediaUp Conversations today, Dr. Marcel.
Thank you.
Now, this is how we draw the curtain on this week's edition of MediaUp Conversations, powered by Jacksonite Professional Development Series. My guest on this episode has been Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, who was former editor in Guardian and now publisher and editor-in-chief of Prime Business Africa. Doc, thank you again for joining me on this episode.
Thank you. Thank you for
this conversation continues on the comment section of this video, and you can get notification on our latest blog post, podcast, MediaUp Conversation, and even our events by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as YouTube at Jacksonite PDS. You can access all our resources we have on our website when you click on www.jacksonitespds.com. My name is Ifeanyichukwu Dinwoke. Thank you again for being part of this episode of MediaUp Conversation.